Hello and welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host Rob. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Rune Knight fighter from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Partly because I haven't really looked at a lot of the Tasha's stuff much, partly because we haven't looked at fighters in a long time, and partly because I just think Rune Knights are cool. I like that whole Norse feel, that kind of vibe. To be honest, when I first saw the name of the subclass, I assumed they were going to be Dwarven Rune inspired, but instead they're actually Giant Rune inspired, which I think is kind of a cool twist. Wasn't what I expected, but I like it. Another thing is, I think it's actually just a really strong subclass. I think that it's very customizable because the runes give you some really nice options, gives you some nice defensive abilities, some good party support, and also some nice control effects, which a lot of fighters don't necessarily have. I also think they make an excellent grappler. Now that is not going to be what this video is about. We're not making a grappling build. We're just talking about this subclass in general. But it's definitely worth mentioning. The reason why is because they get abilities where they can grow larger, which allows you to grapple larger sized creatures. And you also get an ability where you can give yourself advantage on strength checks and stuff like that, giving you advantage to grapple. So there are a number of different reasons. If I was making a grappler, this would be one of the subclasses I'd probably most look into. In general though, I do want to point out one thing as well before we get too deep into this video. Be aware that this class has a lot of different abilities, a lot of your runes that are activated on a reaction or a bonus action. And it's really easy to bottleneck yourself with 3 or 4 different abilities that all trigger on your reaction. But you only have the one reaction and you can only trigger the one ability in any given round. So I'm not saying that's terrible because you can use one round and the next round you use a different one, whatever, right? It's not the end of the world. But just be aware that you might not want to take everything that triggers on a reaction and then, or everything that triggers on a bonus action, right? So, just keep that in mind when you build the character. So level 3, you get to choose your subclass. Obviously we're taking Rune Knight because that's what this video is about. You have 3 different abilities you unlock at level 3. The first one kind of sucks. That's okay though, because you have 2 other ones that are both pretty good. So the first one is bonus proficiencies. You gain proficiency with Thieves' Tool. Oh man, I wish it was Thieves' Tools. Sorry, with Smith's Tools. Thieves' Tools would have been great. Yeah, so you gain proficiency with Smith's Tools, and you learn to speak, read, and write Giant. The reason I say it kind of sucks is because smithing tools in general, in fact, most tools in 5th edition, are just not really great. I want them to be great. That's kind of my frustration with them, but they're kind of underwhelming. Except for Thieves' Tools, of course, which are awesome. Hence the frustration. And I'm not saying that they're completely useless, by the way. Depending on your campaign, you might have a lot of downtime and you're able to use your Smith's Tools to create things and sell them, or to create armor and weapons for yourself and your party members and save your money. But if you look at the rules, the way they're written, the crafting time is so insane, you'd probably be better off just going into a dungeon, killing a bunch of stuff, getting its treasure, and using that money to buy plate mail rather than just trying to create your own plate mail. It's probably going to be a lot easier and faster. And you'll gain experience while you're doing it. So, either way though, it's not the worst thing out there, I mean, it's a free language, the free proficiencies with different tools. Those aren't bad abilities. They're just usually not great. Rune Carver though, on the other hand, is the bread and butter of this subclass. So basically, at level 3, you're going to get 2 different runes that you can know. That's going to go to a 3rd rune at level 7, a 4th rune at level 10, and a 5th rune at 15th level. I like the fact that the runes all have a passive ability and an activated ability. So even if you're not necessarily using the active abilities a lot, some of the passive abilities are really good. One gives you dark vision to 120 feet, one gives you resistance against poison damage. So even if you're not necessarily using these activated abilities, maybe the circumstance just never came up in that adventuring day, the fact that you've got these passive abilities that may or may not be good is just kind of nice to have. If that was the only thing you get, I might be a little underwhelmed. If I only got the activated ability, I'd be like, okay, some of these are pretty good. But the fact that you get both of them together, I think makes it a lot better, and makes it a really, really strong subclass, at least in my opinion. You can change these runes out whenever you gain a level, so if you picked a bad one, you can change it for a better one at the next level. And basically they'll recharge on a long or short rest for the most part. Anyway, so we'll just jump right into the runes, because that's going to be the majority of this video, is talking about these. So the first one is the Cloud Rune. The passive ability is that you have advantage on dexterity sleight of hand checks and charisma deception checks. That's not bad, especially if you're using those abilities. Unfortunately, I think that fighters tend to not be the charisma guys in the party. You've got paladins, you've got bards, you've got sorcerers, and you've got warlocks, and all of them are much more likely to be the party's charisma face type guy than you are. So I don't know that that ability is necessarily a great passive, but especially if you're a dex based guy, sleight of hand might be nice. If you're strength based, you're going to get less benefit. But the activated ability is quite excellent, so I don't think it's a bad rune by any means. I think that the activated ability is phenomenal, by the way. So, when you or a creature you can see within 30 feet of you is hit by an attack roll, you can use your reaction to invoke the rune and choose a different creature within 30 feet of you other than the attacker. The chosen creature becomes the target of the attack using the same roll. The magic can transfer the attack's effects regardless of the attack's range, and then recharges on a short or long rest. So, that's a lot to take in. Let's break it down a bit. So, if you or somebody within 30 feet of you gets hit by an attack roll, so let's say the cleric just gets crushed by a natural 20, right? You could use your reaction to redirect that natural 20 to a different creature other than the attacker himself, and that same hit still applies. So now that guy's going to get crit instead of the cleric. That alone is pretty good. Number two, the effect applies regardless of the attack's range. So your cleric might have gotten hit with a melee attack, but you could redirect that damage to somebody who's 25 feet away from you still, or 30 feet away from you still. And that just makes it even better. I like the fact that it doesn't have to be affecting you. You don't have to have the rune inscribed on the cleric on the off chance he gets hit. Oh yeah, I should have mentioned the inscriptions as well. The inscriptions have to be on like something you can wear or hold. So like a weapon, a shield, a suit of armor, a piece of jewelry that you can hold in one hand, it specifically says, things along those natures, right? So I like the fact that you can have the rune inscribed on you, but when the party's rogue or wizard or cleric or whoever else got hit, you can still use that ability without needing it to be on that person anyways, right? And it could be on you. Like you could have been the one who got crit. It doesn't have to be a crit either, obviously, you know, but I just think that that's a really good defensive ability where I can now just like take something that was a guaranteed hit, because it's not in reaction to them attacking, it's in reaction to them hitting. So I can wait to see what the attack roll was and then use that ability. So I think it's a very strong defensive ability. And getting to use that once per short rest is pretty good. So I do like that ability a lot. The Fire Rune. So as long as you have an object or item inscribed with this rune, your proficiency bonus is doubled for any ability check that you make that uses your proficiency with a tool. And now it's not limited to any specific type of tool, so this one could use Thieves' Tools if you had Thieves' Tool proficiency in some other way. Or maybe you got it from your background, or maybe you took Criminal, for example, and got that as a bonus proficiency from your character background. Maybe you took some levels of Rogue, whatever, right? Either way, any tool you're using, as long as this is inscribed, you're going to get the double your proficiency bonus. Not bad, especially good though with the right types of tools. The activated ability though is that you can invoke the rune to summon fiery shackles. The target takes an extra 2d6 fire damage and must succeed on a strength saving throw or be restrained for 1 minute. While restrained by the shackles, the target takes 2d6 fire damage at the start of each of its turns. It can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, banishing the shackles on a success, and again, recharges on a short or long rest. Now, this also is an ability that's used or not used depending on whether or not you hit. So you hit the creature, you can now choose to do the fire shackles. And it does the damage up front. So, I mean, I don't know that this is the best ability to be using with it, but just as an example, you could use this when you get a natural 20 and now just do 4d6 damage up front instead of 2. You know, that's not bad. I like the fact that it's, you know, the damage is up front every round as well, so I do the damage, even if it makes it saving throw, it takes that initial 2d6 damage, right? If it fails the saving throw, it's now restrained. It's going to take an automatic 2d6 at the start of its next turn, and it doesn't get to make the saving throw until the end of its next turn. So, you know, that starts to get to be pretty decent damage. There's also some synergy with the ability you get later where you can give creatures disadvantage on an ability check or a saving throw. Not bad. You can also give your allies advantage. But, you know, not bad. I think there's probably better uses for that ability. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I do like the fact that there's, you know, some natural synergy built into your own class for using your abilities like that. Either way, if I compare this to, say, an Ensnaring Strike, it's more damage, and it doesn't require concentration. And it's not using a spell slot. I mean, sure, you're using your rune slot, which might be more valuable depending on circumstances. But the fact that it's, you know, a free Ensnaring Strike, essentially, without concentration, already makes it a pretty good ability, in my opinion. Next, we have the Frost Rune. This is probably the most disappointing at level 3 of the options you have. So while carrying an object described with the rune or wearing it, you have advantage on Wisdom Animal Handling checks and Charisma Intimidation checks. Now, these are checks you might be making quite a bit. You might be the Intimidation guy. You might be riding a horse and needing to use a lot of animal handling. But in a lot of campaigns, again, these are abilities that are probably not going to be used a ton. So I don't think the passive ability is super great. The active ability, though, is that you can use a bonus action to invoke this rune, and for 10 minutes you get a +2 bonus on all ability checks and saving throws that use Strength or Constitution, and it charges on a short or long rest. My only problem with this one is that I may not know at the beginning of a day that I'm going to be going into situations that require me to make a lot of Strength or Constitution checks. And so I think that as a level 3 option, when I only have 2 choices, this one's probably one of the weakest ones. I'm not saying it's terrible. It does, you know, last a fair amount of time, and, you know, getting a +2 on those checks and saving throws isn't terrible. It's just, it's an ability, like, I can pretty much guarantee that if I get into enough fights in a day, I'm going to find an opportunity to use, you know, my fiery chains. I'm probably going to be able to redirect a hit from myself or an ally to a different target. I may not need to make a lot of Strength or Constitution checks at a +2, and I'm already proficient with those saves, which means that, you know, as I level up, that +2 bonus becomes a lot less influential. At low levels, a +2 bonus is pretty big, right? If I've only got a +2 or 3 from my con, let's say, a +2 proficiency bonus, you know, adding another +2 is a big deal. If I've got a +5 con bonus and a +6 proficiency bonus, I'm probably going to make that check regardless, you know. And then I'm also a fighter. I get to re-roll a couple failed saving throws a day, you know. I mean, I've got other abilities that I'm probably going to be valuing a lot more highly. But again, it's not terrible. It's just, I think there's stronger options. So our fourth and final option at this level is the Stone Rune, and I like this one a lot too. So while carrying or wearing an object inscribed with this rune, you have advantage on Wisdom Insight checks, and you have Dark Vision out to a range of 120 feet. I think that is awesome as a passive ability. Unlike the others, like, yeah, okay, I might still need to make or not make Wisdom Insight checks depending on the campaign, right? But Dark Vision, even if I already had Dark Vision, 120 feet is pretty huge, right? That's probably better than what I had already. And if I didn't have Dark Vision, then that's just even better, you know? And I think that's a pretty excellent ability because, especially if I made, let's say, like a human or whatever else, right? Somebody else who doesn't have Dark Vision, right? Now, I know that if I have this rune inscribed on my equipment, I'm just going to permanently have 120 feet of Dark Vision, and whether I'm using the activated ability or not, I'm always going to get value out of this ability, you know, so I think that's pretty strong. The activated ability, So, in addition, when a creature you can see ends its turn within 30 feet of you, you can use your reaction to invoke the rune and force the creature to make a wisdom saving throw. Unless the save succeeds, the creature is charmed by you for 1 minute. While charmed in this way, the creature has a speed of 0 and is incapacitated, descending into a dreamy stupor. The creature repeats the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on a success. And of course, it recharges on a short or long rest. But note, it doesn't break on damage. So this is basically like a hold monster effect that's available to you at level 3 and doesn't require concentration. That is pretty good, honestly. So I like this ability a lot. This is probably my favorite rune at this level. And, like I said, giving myself dark vision permanently, essentially, at level 3. And then at least once per day, if not once per short rest, I'm probably going to be able to find a way to use this ability. Something ends its turn within 30 feet of me. I can use my reaction, try to put it into a stupor. That's a pretty great ability. And now it's incapacitated. And, we're probably just going to crush it very, very quickly. And like I said, no concentration. I think that ability is phenomenal. Anyways, still a level 3 ability here, but level 7 runes. So again, this is still part of our rune carver that we got at 3rd level, but we have to be 7th or higher level now to use these last runes. We get the heal rune. While wearing or carrying an object that bears this rune, you have advantage on saving throws against being poisoned, and you have resistance against poison damage. Obviously, this ability is going to have less value if you're a dwarf, but, if you're not, go crazy with it. I love that passive ability. I think that's pretty great. In addition, you can invoke the rune as a bonus action, gaining resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage for 1 minute. It charges on a short or long rest, of course. But note, it's not limited to non-magical damage. It works on magical, non-magical, as long as it's piercing, blunt, or bludgeoning, or slashing, sorry. Then you've got resistance, and that is also a phenomenal ability. I just love that rune. And then finally, we have the Storm rune. So again, while wearing or carrying an object inscribed with this rune, you have advantage on Intelligence Arcana checks. Yes, exactly what you wanted. Arcana checks on your fighter. Nobody more suited for that role than you, of course. Just terrible. And you can't be surprised as long as you aren't incapacitated. Okay, that part at least isn't bad. It doesn't really stack with alert. So if you're going to take alert, getting a little less value from that feat than usual. But, maybe this is one less reason to take alert. And maybe you can take a different feat instead. The activated ability, though. You enter into a prophetic state for 1 minute or until you're incapacitated. Which, of course, you'll never be incapacitated because you're an awesome fighter who, is entered into a prophetic state where you can see the future. Why would you be incapacitated? Until the state ends, when you or another creature you can see within 60 feet of you makes an attack roll, a saving throw, or an ability check, you can use your reaction to cause the roll to have advantage or disadvantage, also recharging on a short or long rest. I absolutely love this ability because, again, it allows you to really support other allies. I think it's got good synergy with your own abilities. You could try to impose disadvantage on their strength saving throw in order to break out of your fiery shackles. You could use it to impose disadvantage on an ally spell they're casting and now make it much more likely they're going to land that big save or suck type spell. And you can also use it to give advantage to allies. Maybe your rogue has disadvantage to attack, and now he can't sneak attack. And now you can give him advantage, cancels that out, and suddenly sneak attack is back on the menu. And, I think there's a lot of nice synergy there. The fact that it's a 60-foot range means you can use it in almost any situation, really. It covers a large range of abilities, and, I just think it's an absolutely great ability. So I like that one a lot. The passive ability, advantage on Arcana checks. What do you do? But, not being able to be surprised is also nice, because being surprised totally sucks. Anyways, moving on. finally to our third level 3 feature, Giant Smite. You've learned how to imbue yourself with the might of giants. As a bonus action, you magically gain the following benefits, which last for 1 minute. If you are smaller than large, you become large, along with anything you are wearing. If you allow the room to become large, your size doesn't change. This is nice for grappling things that are, too big for you to normally grapple, especially if you're a small creature to begin with, like a halfling or gnome, That's pretty nice. There's also some weird rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide and in the Monster Manual, or maybe I can't remember which one it is, where large or huge weapons actually do bonus base damage. So large weapons do double damage. We don't actually use those rules in my campaign for players, but definitely worth at least checking in with your DM. If your greatsword now gets to do 4d6 base damage instead of 2d6, that could be a pretty nice, advantageous feature to have. Anyways, you also have advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws. Like I said, this is one of the reasons why this subclass is such an excellent grappler, because giving you some advantage on your strength checks, growing to a bigger size, all good stuff for grappling. Once on each of your turns, one of your attacks with a weapon or an unarmed strike can deal an extra 1d6 damage to the target on a hit. You can use this feature a number of times, equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. Now, I'm never going to say no to extra damage, but 1d6 a couple times per day, once per turn, it's not huge. It does scale a bit. You get a d8 later, and at 18th it goes to a d10. And, by 18th level, you're doing it 6 times per long rest. It's still not great compared to some of the other, a battle master who might be able to use a d12 by then. They're getting a bunch of maneuvers. They get abilities where if they don't have a maneuver dice, they automatically get one when they roll initiative, stuff like that. So as a damage boost, it is pretty minor. And but like I said, it's still free damage. I'm not going to say no to that. It's better than nothing. So, why not, right? At level 7, you also get the Runic Shield ability. So we're finally moving to the higher level abilities. You can use rune magic to protect your allies. When another creature you can see within 60 feet of you is hit by an attack roll, you can use your reaction to force the attacker to re-roll the d20 and use the new roll. You can use this a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. Excuse me for a second. Again, this is one that I'm probably going to use to try to cancel out attacks on squishier allies, especially if they get crit. This is an excellent time to use this ability. Just force the DM to re-roll it. And even if they still hit, it's probably not going to be a crit at least, right? So I do think that, I don't think it's a super strong ability, but it's one that you're guaranteed to find opportunities to use it, So, that's never a bad thing. I'd way rather have an ability that's, mid-tier empowered, but I'm going to be using it a lot, than an ability that I think is pretty good, but is almost never going to be used, right? So I think it's at least pretty strong. Mostly just because of how often I'm going to use it. Level 10, Great Stature. The magic of your runes permanently alters you. When you gain this feature, roll 3d4. You grow a number of inches in height equal to the roll. So you just become permanently taller. Moreover, the extra damage you deal with your Giant Smite feature increases to 1d8. So that's the ability to talk about last time. You can grow to large size, and you get to do an extra 1d6 to one of your attacks a couple times a day. But now it's an extra 1d8. We also 10th level, so it's now up to 3 or 4 times a day, I think. So, it's not as bad. Level 15, Master of Runes. This ability, by the way, is awesome. You can invoke each rune you know from your Rune Carver feature twice rather than once, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a short or long rest. I like that it's not just one specific rune. It's not you can choose one of your runes and use it twice. It's just all of them. So you can just, basically just get double the mileage out of each one of those runes, and I think that it's very, very strong. I mean, imagine at this point you can be using like your hold monster type effect, putting 2 things per short rest, incapacitated, and then this recharges on a short rest, I mean, you could be incapacitating like 4, 5, 6 things a day, not even needing spell slots to do it with. I mean, that is pretty insane. Anyways, Runic Juggernaut, level 18. You learn how to amplify the power of your rune power transformation. As a result, the extra damage you deal with the Giant's Might feature increases to 1d10. Boom. Moreover, when you use the feature, your size can increase to huge, and while you are at that size, your reach increases by 5 feet. So again, if you are using those other rules, huge weapons do triple damage, so that is pretty big. Like I said, we don't use those rules in my campaign, so that's a little underwhelming. But I do think that having the extra 5-foot range on certain characters can be a lot of fun. Like, imagine if you're using, say, Polearm, and you have the Sentinel feat. And now, instead of having a 10-foot range, when you activate this ability, you have 15-foot range. Now imagine that you are a Bugbear and have an extra 5-foot of range. And now you have a 20-foot range with your Polearm, and when somebody comes into range, you can make an opportunity attack with your reaction, moving them to 0 movement speed if you hit. And now they're 20 feet away from you. That's pretty awesome. Gives you a wide range of spaces around your character where you can just lock things down. So I think that could be a lot of fun. And again, for a grappler, having an extra 5 feet of range could be pretty fun as well, because now you can grapple guys from outside of their typical melee range, and that's just kind of funny. I mean, once they're grappled, they're no longer outside that range, I would assume. But, the fact that somebody's like 10 or 15 feet away from you, and now suddenly you're grappling them, that could be kind of funny. It's like you're a giant kraken or something. Overall, I don't think it's the strongest ability out there for an 18th level ability, but it's not the worst, If nothing else, doing D10 damage on 1 attack per round 6 times a day at this point. Let's not mention that paladins by level 11 are doing D8 to every single one of their attacks forever from that point on. A little salty about that one, but I do think that there is some potential with specific builds to maybe capitalize on some of that stuff. My only caution would be, as we've already discussed, there are a plethora of abilities you have that are using either your bonus actions or your reactions. And so while I think things like Sentinel would be really good on this type of character, bear in mind that you still only have the 1 reaction, and that bottleneck is just getting more and more tight the more abilities we add to that. But I still think it's pretty decent. I also think that this would be a pretty strong subclass for either a 3 or 7 level dip if you wanted to multi-class with something else. Either getting your different runes at level 3, some of which are pretty strong, or your level 7 ones, again, pretty decent. And, if you wanted to add extra attack to a class that might not have it usually, I think taking 7 levels of this class, you get your bonus attack at level 5, you get an extra feat at level 6 to make up for, whatever else. Level 7, you got a couple rune choices. You can even go 8 levels and get that extra feat choice as well there. I think that that's not necessarily a bad option. However, that's basically everything I wanted to talk about in this video. I think that it's a really fun and interesting subclass. I haven't had a chance to play it myself personally yet, but I think they look really strong, and there's a lot of intriguing options and some nice strategic choices that you can make that I think would make it a very fun subclass to play. So anyways, that's everything. That was my thoughts on this. Feel free to like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and of course, most importantly, leave me your comments in the comment section. I look forward to reading them. Maybe you've played this subclass. Maybe you want to play this subclass. Maybe you're like, hey, I was on the fence between the Cavalier and this. And I remember you said that you had a Cavalier in a party, and you died at level 1 before you actually even became a Cavalier. And this sounds actually more interesting to me than dying at level 1 without ever choosing a subclass. Technically, if I died at level 1, I wouldn't have chosen this one either. But, let's not complicate things with these extraneous details right now. Personally, I think this looks like a fun subclass, and I really actually look forward to trying it out with some campaign. So, anyways, that's everything, and I'll see you next time. Bye.